Okay, Amber, I'm a little early, but we are all ready to go.
Awesome, thank you. I'll just get things started. Hopefully it's not, not just Julie and I, and we will start on time, it sounds like.
I think it's scheduled to start at 8:35, so we can give people a few more minutes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We have a lot of people absent. Karina and I were a lot of scheduling conflicts today.
Amber, my work computer is not something's weird with it. So I'm using my other computer and I don't know why, but the camera doesn't work on this computer. So I'm here just
Okay.
as a black screen, but I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We need you here. We got a lot of people with conflicts today. So thank you.
Alrighty.
And we'll just wait one more minute and then we'll get started. I think we're going to have, just note that we don't have a quorum if we don't.
Amber, can you hear me okay this morning? You're cutting out just a bit.
Oh, I am darn. I can hear you fine. Can other people hear me? Because I'm doing an interview, so that's not going to be good if my audio is bad.
I can hear you just fine, Amber.
Okay, so I'm going to start the meeting in just a second, but if you're having trouble with my audio, Heather, you know, sometimes if I log back in, if it is just you, sometimes that works, just a thought. But
I'll do that. I'll be right back.
okay, try that and just see. And then let me know if, since I'm doing the interviews, if my audio's messed up during the day, I might, maybe Julie, would you continue on for me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, because I might have to turn my video off. Okay, so it is time. I am going to call the Parks and Conservation meeting of, what is our date today? July 21st to order. And we continue to meet virtually, although that we are going to have a hybrid model really soon. So I'm very excited about that. I know we're all going to be happy to see each other's faces, and I think it will be a better system coming out of this, which is good. So anyway, you can join us by going to www.ci.missoula.mt.us/webcasts. If you are joining us by phone, you can press *9 to raise and lower your hand when I call for public comment. And you can always leave us a message for all of council on any issue at 406-552-6012, or email us at council@ci.missoula.mt.us. So with that, Corinne, go ahead and take that down. Would you go ahead and do roll call for me?
Yes, just let me get back to the roll call part. Okay, here we go. Anderson. I don't see Stacy. Mirtha,
I think she's out.
John Contos,
I am here.
Heather Harp,
I'm also here.
Jordan Hess,
Here.
Gwen Jones,
Here.
Julie Merritt,
Present.
Jesse Ramos,
I think he's out.
Amber Sherrill,
Present.
Sandra Vaseca,
I think she's in and out today.
Brian Von Lossberg,
Out.
Heidi West.
Here.
Okay, and it looks like we do have a quorum. It's not
Yes. Barely made it. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you got 7.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
yeah.
Thought it might be just Julie and I at the beginning. So we have minutes from June 9th and June, yeah, I got this right, and June 16th. If there are any changes to those minutes, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, those minutes will stand approved. And we do not have any public here for public comment. We have one order of business today, and that is to do interviews for the energy and climate team. I'm sure you've all seen the schedule, but as of right now, we don't have our first, I think that she's got a few more minutes. Our first interview is with Jenny Dixon. So I think let's just kind of stick by our computers and I'll watch for her and I'll let you know when she gets here, and we'll take a very brief recess until she is here.
Amber, may I ask a question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Are you gonna be the only point person taking the questions, or we're gonna go around the proverbial table?
Thanks. I think that all, assuming, can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
No, that helped. Okay. I don't know why that works, but it does sometimes. I think, we could do it any way, but I think I'll just ask the questions unless my audio gets bad, just because it gets very confusing, I think, but then we'll be able to ask questions at the end if you have any specifically. That sounds okay.
Great. And last question. I saw that Chad Bauer had his resume in, but I don't see him on the calendar today. Will we be interviewing him next week?
I do not know the answer to that yet. I didn't think they didn't get him scheduled, so I'll let you know.
Okay.
And actually, we're not taking a break because she is here. Julie, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I'm curious as to why the references, the names of the references for these applicants was redacted off of the applications. It's kind of helpful to know. I mean, I understand, maybe redacting the address and phone number of those people, but the name was also redacted.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I was kind of surprised at that too. I know that we've redacted different things in the past, but I didn't think that we did those. So I don't know the answer to that.
Maybe we can make a note to ask staff about that. And
Okay.
because I just think that's an important piece of information that shouldn't be redacted.
Yeah, that was odd to me as well. I do think, okay, thank you. Jenny, I think, Jenny, you're in the meeting now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Jenny.
Hi.
So welcome and thank you. You and I have met before. And I'm going to go ahead. I don't know if you were listening to that, because normally in this format, everyone asks questions, but just because it gets a little complicated on Zoom, I'm going to go ahead and ask all the questions.
Okay.
But first, welcome and thank you for your interest in joining this team. I think I speak for all of us in saying that we are just endlessly thankful for the engagement of citizens in Missoula and their willingness to put their time and energy into things they care about. So really appreciate that. And I'll start off with, I think we have about 10 minutes for this interview.
Okay.
So what's your interest in serving on the energy and climate team? And just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything you think is important.
Let's see. My interest in serving on the team, I guess I am partly curious to find out more about what the team does and what your strategic mission is, and what goals you long-term and short-term goals the council has for the committee, and the committee has as well. So I don't know a whole lot about the team. I've worked in local government for about 30 years in Missoula County, in the Joint City County Planning Office, starting in 1991 too. And now work for the county and work closely with Diana Manetta. She was one of my, Julie, just to answer your question, she was one of my references. She and I have worked very closely on a number of things. One of them more kind of prominent it has been a cryptocurrency mining, requiring renewable energy for that. And that's surprisingly become a little bit more popular across the country. And we've even interviewed with some folks in other countries over in Europe where they're interested in using that. So that kind of woke me up it didn't wake me up. It reminded me that even small things that we do in Missoula County can reverberate. And so I guess it spurred me to think about spending some of my time non-professionally doing the same thing, or trying to help solve some of the climate issues at a local level that could have larger impacts.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
As far as about myself, like I said, I've worked for local government and been a Missoulian for over 30 years. I do marvel not only at Missoulians' willingness to participate, but how smart people are and devoted. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what more I can tell you about myself, but I'm happy to answer questions.
No, that's great. I'll run through the questions and then we can talk a little more about the team at the end. But that is great. And I agree with you. We have a really smart community and I'm always amazed at some of the talent that we have. And so some of these is just know as we work through these interview questions, I mean, some of them, depending on what your answers are, might seem a little redundant. So describe your familiarity with the city's greenhouse gas and energy conservation plan. Are there areas that intersect with the city energy conservation and are there areas that intersect with the city energy conservation and climate action plan? That's a very strange question.
I am familiar with the greenhouse gas energy conservation plan, but I am not sure I'm familiar with the action plan. Is that what you're?
Well, that's a strangely worded question. I didn't catch that to begin with. But you are familiar with the conservation plan. I mean, I think that's probably a better way.
Well, and only recently. You know, in preparation for this interview, I did take a look at that conservation plan and, you know, read through it. And I wasn't sure how it related to the team other than, of course, pursuing the same goals. And one of the components that's there, of course, all of them are of interest, some of them stronger interest. And in my profession as a land use planner, my big project that I've been working on for about 5 years now is rewriting the county zoning regulations. And one of the things I'm championing in the process and trying to bring people along, staff as well as the public, is how to reduce energy impacts of buildings. And so the county this year adopted some energy use intensity reduction goals for their county facilities. And so I'm trying to incorporate those into the county zoning for large commercial and multifamily developments as a proposal, and trying to make the case that that is, protecting public health and safety, and that was what zoning is trying to accomplish. So that's one of my strong interests, is how buildings either can generate or protect us from CO2 emissions. On a personal level, one of the things I'm exploring more is plant-based diet. And I was seeing, I think it was, if for every month a person eats a plant-based diet, you save 630 pounds of carbon. And so, just trying to look at all those aspects. And I did see in the conservation plan, all of those kind of issues. And then I guess finally, another aspect that I've worked on extensively is alternatives to agricultural production that might be more efficient. And I wrote a white paper, a couple pages of ways to do that, including vertical gardens and garden agriculture inside of small containers, which increases efficiency tremendously. So anyway, I know this is a short interview, so I will be quiet.
No, that's great. I really appreciate it.
All this stuff. So
I love that you're so involved in it, and thank you. I think you've kind of answered the next question, but in case you want to add something, I'll ask it. Do you have any personal or professional expertise that relates to one of the designated categories with the climate team?
I think just to be efficient with our time, I will leave my answers as they are.
Okay, thanks. What issues do you consider important for this team to consider?
I think, first of all, educating people to vote, and at a local level, we do great, I think, in terms of electing people that care about this and take steps. I think we struggle at a state and sometimes federal level. So for me, the best way to have an impact is to vote, and then also to educate people about opportunities that are available. But I am somewhat unclear about the strategic mission of this team, and so that I'm not sure I can answer that directly, as clearly as I would like to, because I'm still not entirely clear of the team's mission and duties, I guess.
Thanks. And so, yeah, so I definitely understand that. I'm going to answer that question now, only because we're going into some questions that aren't specific to the team, but more about you and experience and things on boards. So, and I'm not surprised that you're a little confused by that, because we have definitely been, as over time since this team started, and then has kind of more, we've got Climate Smart Missoula, we've had the position at the city added over these years. So they are kind of reworking where they can be effective, and kind of reflecting back on what you had said earlier about so many smart people in Missoula. I keep saying we've got this brain trust of people around this issue, and we are kind of figuring out where it makes sense to plug in. So since we have this giant effort that we need to do, how do we plug this team in? And I think with some staff changes, we're looking into that a bit too. So I'd love to have more experience on kind of figuring that out. They did some legislative tracking this past year, definitely looking at some of our buildings here in Missoula, our properties, as well as kind of what we're looking at in the future. So I think there's some great opportunity in this group to kind of really make an impact, but we are kind of reworking that right now. So I'm not surprised that you're a little kind of confused by it. So back to this, so we can keep going, and I'm happy to answer questions after this as well, if you have them. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to compromise, collaborate, or deal with conflict, and what were the results of your efforts?
Well, I do it every day, as do we all. But I think that some of the examples that I've brought up in this conversation so far, the development of some zoning regulations where I tend to want to take them, as far as I can within the bounds of law, but the public process for adopting zoning requires taking public input, and then of course the commissioners make the decision in my jurisdiction, so I think that just the example would be developing some regulations where I would like to require or propose a requirement for using 100% renewable energy. And the commissioners were awesome. They adopted that. And then we had to work with the managers of Project Spokane and Hyperblock, which was the crypto firm that we had here over in Bonner, and trying to explain to them how to meet those regulations, and ultimately faced claims that we caused them to go bankrupt. That was tough because that was not our interest. And we tried to repeat, in the news stories and in conversations, that we are not against cryptocurrency. We simply want to make sure that it's using renewable energy and not taking that off the grid for others. Because they did assert that they were using hydropower up to 60 megawatts, and with plans to go to 100. And if that's being taken away from the already existing renewable energy sources that we have for Missoula, we didn't want to see that. So that was kind of a tough situation. hopefully that.
I tracked some of that. That was that's a great example of it. Okay, I'm going to keep going. How would you describe the level of urgency associated with addressing climate change? How do you talk to people who have a different sense of that urgency?
I think it's, I think it's the premier problem of our time and beyond. And really, 40 years ago, when I was heading off to Berkeley, I still take a lot of heat from people that remember me saying we need to look at the impacts of how much population growth we are experiencing in this country and this world. And so I guess I see it even as a problem, a major problem back 50 years ago. And so I think it is a tremendous global emergency. And when I talk to people that don't either agree with that or don't see that, I try not to convey that sense of urgency, because I don't think that does anybody any good. In fact, I had a girlfriend talking to me who was just feeling incredibly depressed and about it, and really just said, all I can do, and I go back to this voting thing, all I can do is vote, and then I'm not really big on trying to persuade or convince people to behave a certain way that they haven't kind of come to organically. I try to educate them, but that's not really my thing to try to push people or persuade people strongly to change their actions. I'm more of a behind the scenes kind of a person. So Heidi's smiling.
Thank you. The city and county offer board training twice a year. The training covers good governance, open meetings, public participation, and right to know, ethics, conflicts of interest, bylaws, minutes, and parliamentary procedures. The city and county feels that it's very important that all the city board members attend this training. Have you attended or will you attend this training?
I help organize that training.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And the Energy and Climate Team is currently scheduled to meet monthly at a time designated by the committee. The meetings are set for the second Thursday of the month from 12 to 2. Do you have time to attend these meetings and do the research necessary to participate in committee activities?
Other than August and possibly September, because I didn't know when the meetings, so I've already have commitments for August, and I'm looking at the possibility of juggling September. Yes, I do. I can make that commitment.
Thank you. Now, do you have any questions? Is there anything we can answer for you? I think we have just a couple. Let's see, do we have a couple minutes left? Oh, we don't. If you have a quick question, we have time for that.
Yeah, no, I think I asked my question. My primary question was, the mission, the strategic goals of the team, and it sounds like that's kind of evolving. So
yeah, it is. Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that question because I think that's an important one that we are kind of working through. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your interest, and I appreciate the work you've done so far and your background. And yeah, so we will be in touch once we have a number of people interested in this position. So we have, I think, 5 candidates total. And we're going to be doing those interviews today and possibly next week as well. We're kind of, but we'll be in touch with you soon.
Well, I have no doubt you will find someone very talented and competent. And I thank you all for your time and for the work you do for the city. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So we have one more we have 3 more interviews and maybe 4, but I do not see our next interviewee. Let me make sure. And Karina, did you get, Stacy Anderson is here.
Yep, I got her.
Okay, awesome. So I don't see Louisa. Let's maybe we'll take a 5-minute break. Let's come back at, how about 9:05, since we have that break scheduled, and I'll just keep an eye out for Louisa and see if she is here. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. We will be recessed. Karina, I see we have one attendee via phone. I'm going to unmute them and see if this is Louisa. Louisa, if that's you, you can unmute yourself now. I'm seeing that your hand's raised. I'm asking to unmute. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hello?
Yeah. Oh, hi. Okay. Is this Louisa?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm having technical difficulties. I am
Nope.
here.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
When we're going to promote you into the meeting, I went ahead and recessed for a few minutes because I didn't see you. But we'll start at 9:05. But we'll bring you into the now. Karina, if you could, can I do that? Let's see. Yeah, Karina, if you could promote the attendee, that would be great. And then just give us a few more minutes.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
I'm having trouble here too promoting her. It's not giving me the option to.
Yeah, because I can't promote her either.
Yeah, it's just it's only giving me lower hand, rename, remove, and disable talking, which are not.
Okay, so maybe it will work for us to just keep her unmuted and I'll do the interview that way.
Okay, I think it will. We should be good, but that's weird. I'm not sure. I'll keep playing around with it, but I'm not sure what's going on here.
Yeah, I normally can promote someone too, and I can't do it. So, okay, well, we'll just got one more minute. If people are back, let's kind of get our videos back on, other than Gwen that can't turn hers on today. And then we'll get started because
I'm on my iPhone. I wonder if that's an issue.
I don't know, but
I
if you
don't-
can hear me okay, I'll just ask questions and you could answer. Normally we can promote people through on the phone, but if you can hear me okay, then we'll just run with it this way.
Okay, sounds good. Because normally I can do Zoom from like with the video from my phone, but it wouldn't work.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, and it's very strange that we can't promote you, but we'll just make it work. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see here. I think we've got people. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just get started. So first I want to say I'm sorry you can't turn your video on and that piece isn't working. But thank you for your interest and serving on this committee. As I said in the last interview, I think I speak for all of council that we are just really grateful that there are so many people in our community willing to volunteer their time and their expertise for issues that they care about. And I know it's very helpful to us as council people to have that level of engagement. We have about 10 minutes for this interview, and I'm going to just run through the questions. Normally we have everyone asking questions, but that is very complicated on Zoom to know whose turn it is. So I'm just going to ask questions, and some of them, you may have answered them in previous questions, so don't feel like you have to repeat yourself, but I'll ask them anyway in case you want to add something. So the first question is, what is your interest in serving on the energy and climate team? And also just tell us anything you would like to about yourself.
Well, I'm pretty new to Missoula. I grew up in the Bakken in eastern Montana. And obviously, climate change is a huge factor in all of our lives and only going to get bigger and bigger. So I think it's really important that we focus on that and as a community really work on shifting our cultural perspectives around energy and climate into a more sustainable policy for both for personal good and for our whole community and our family generations down.
Great, thank you. And describe your, were you finished there?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I thought I might have interrupted you. Describe your familiarity with the city's greenhouse gas and energy conservation plan.
Honestly, I am not familiar with that. Is that on the website?
Yes, it is. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I'll be happy we can get you a link to that. That's okay.
Yeah,
you can
that's great.
still read it. Do you have any personal or professional expertise that relates to one of the designated categories in that plan? Why don't you describe just kind of professional expertise you have as it relates to energy and climate?
I guess, well, I have worked with what I would call energy companies doing oil field work, which is really interesting because I understand their point of view and the workers' point of view in trying to bring these people to the table in that we aren't trying to, quote, take your job or anything like that. We're not trying to make your life hard. We're trying to save the environment. So I guess I understand their point of view would be a personal area of expertise. I do currently work at Ferguson's Law Office here in Missoula as a paralegal. We do a lot of environmental work, mostly with like wildlife and water rights. But it is super interesting and it's a personal passion of mine. And then I do have professional work experience drafting policy and working for community level change.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
What issues do you consider important for this team to consider?
I really think we should refocus our narrative. Missoula, I think, is actually doing quite well. but really refocusing the narrative to a cultural community approach. It's not just about personal responsibility and recycling. That's great, but we need to community level use less plastic and like produce less waste. So if every restaurant had a tri-bin and every restaurant was really encouraged to not use plastics, that would make a huge impact.
Great, thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. I appreciate that answer. And can you provide an example of a time when you had to compromise, collaborate, or deal with conflict, and what the results of those efforts were?
Yeah. So back in Sydney, Montana, where I moved from, I was running a grant called the Drug-Free Communities Grant. And based on our data that we had from the community and our surveys, we were supposed to focus on two substances that were affecting our youth. Alcohol is a huge problem out there, and we all know that. But marijuana was the other issue according to our data. What was really interesting, because I had to focus on whatever our top two were based on our statistics. But the community approached me, various members, about methamphetamine use and the rising use of methamphetamine in the community, especially our children. And so I rewrote our grant to include methamphetamine. Even though my data didn't support it, I used our community voices. Unfortunately, the government was okay with that. But it was definitely an interesting predicament to work around.
Yeah, well, that's a big issue nationwide, even if it didn't come up at the top, right? So let's see. So how would you describe the level of urgency associated with addressing climate change? And how do you talk with people that have a different sense of that urgency?
I think the climate change is huge. I think it's impacting our daily lives. Look at the fire in Oregon. This is a huge problem right now, today, across much of the United States and the world. So it's of utmost urgency that we start handling this. However, I do think a lot of people think it's something that's not that bad, or this is the natural way of the earth. And I try to impress on them, like, well, what about, a drought? Like, your crops died because it's dry, right? Because of climate change. So if you can kind of impress upon people the personal consequences of it, I think they understand it's more urgent than they maybe realized.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to not think it's a problem looking out my window right now as the smoke rolls into the valley. Okay, so the city and county offer board training twice a year. The training covers good governance, open meetings, public participation and right to know, ethics, conflicts of interest, bylaws, minutes, and parliamentary procedures. The city feels that it's important that all the board members for the city attend this training. Have you attended, or will you attend that training?
I would be happy to attend that training.
Right, thanks. And then the energy and climate team is currently scheduled to meet monthly at a time designated by the committee. The meetings are set for the second Thursday of the month as of right now, from 12 to 2. Do you have time to attend these meetings and do the research necessary to participate in committee activities?
Yeah, I think I do.
Great, yeah. And I think we have just a couple minutes here left. So if you have any questions for us, we would be happy to ask those or answer those. And then just to let you know the process, we have one position open right now for 5 applicants. We are really fortunate to have a very engaged citizenry here. But we're going to go through all those interviews, and then we will get back with you. And regardless of that, we're just really thankful for your interest. So I want to say that again.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty young, but I really feel that being involved with local level decisions is really important for providing sustainable change for the future. It's really about policy and making sure that policy fits within our communities. What is the term Is it a year or is it longer?
I think these are, let me look, I should know that off the top of my head, and I do not. If anyone knows that, let's see, it's a 3-year term. Let's see.
Okay.
The term
Okay,
beginning
cool.
August 1st, 2021 and ending July 31st, 24.
Yeah. I think it's really important to be in the room, I suppose, where decisions are being made.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't. It's harder to have an impact
Yeah.
if you don't show up. And I
Great.
try to impress that up my fellow friends and families, and
Yeah.
they are wildly supportive. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, you gotta be engaged to make a difference for sure. So, well, thank you so much, and we will get back with you. I'm not sure exactly when our last interview is, so it'll be sometime soon though. So I just really appreciate your time, and sorry you had a little technical difficulty and that we couldn't kind of get you into the meeting and see your video and all that, but we will be in touch, and I appreciate you taking the time to interview.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm glad I finally got in. You guys take care.
Me too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, good. We have Chad here. So I don't know if we can we promote you? Hold on. Chad, are you in the meeting here?
I am.
Oh, good. Okay, great. We were having a little issue promoting people earlier, so I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Hello, and welcome, and thank you. We are, as you know, probably just heard, we are doing a number of interviews today, and we've got 5 people interviewing for the one position, which I'm just endlessly thankful. It makes for very hard decisions on our part, but I'm really thankful everyone's so engaged. So, and as I have said to the others, just I think I speak for all of council saying thank you for your willingness and interest in doing this. I mean, this makes it's very helpful for us to have strong committees that are advising us, and just helps us make good decisions. And we're thankful that people volunteer their time. So I always feel like I should start there. So I'm going to run through. Normally we go around the room, but it's very hard to do that on Zoom because our panels move around a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and ask all the questions. And please know that some of them, as we go through, some of them may be redundant based on what your answers are. So I'll still ask them and make sure that you don't want to add anything, or you do. So what is your interest in serving on the energy and climate team? And please just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Amber, thank you very much. A little bit about myself, born and raised in Missoula. I think I know pretty much everybody on this call. Have spent my entire life in the waste industry business, with the exception of a couple year stint that I needed a break from being in garbage. Really, my interest on the Energy and Climate Committee is just based on what we're doing as a company to try to help Missoula get to 0 by 50 in our emissions, and the things that we can partner with the city and county to try to make sure that you guys are hitting your goals. We've got a lot of options to lower the carbon footprint. We've got some neat things that we've been talking about that we want to start doing. And I think I bring a very long history of being involved in the Missoula community and being able to move things forward and get things off the ground.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Would you describe your familiarity with the city's greenhouse gas and energy conservation plan?
You know, I have not looked at it for a while. I will be upfront. There's a lot of things that have been going on. I've spent more time on the 0 to 50 plan and working on that side of it. And then the county's emissions plan by 2030. I've spent some time with the commissioners discussing how we can partner to get everybody to that point, and what we bring to the table. And then also, some of the new technologies are out there. How can we use those? More electric buses. Is there an option for electric garbage trucks? Is there an option for compressed natural gas as opposed to diesel, or recycled natural gas as opposed to diesel? And do we have the ability to partner and move forward with the city, looking at not only our fleet from a private company standpoint, but a city and county fleet? Does it make sense to look at that kind of partnership moving forward to reduce all of those emissions over the next 10 or 15 years by replacing all of our fleets?
Great, thanks. The next question relates to that plan, but I mean, you're kind of answering some of this too. Do you have any personal or professional experience as it relates to the areas in that document? If you want to just expand on anything you've said, I'll give you the opportunity here.
Sure. We did a project about 10 years ago in Boise, and converted our entire fleet to CNG. And part of that was a federal grant, and then part of that was our private partnership. So I'm very familiar with how that process had worked. We actually have the only fueling station in Boise, and we actually do fuel county vehicles, city vehicles, and private vehicles out of our facility in Boise. And we have now moved to, we are testing in our Boise market right now, electric garbage trucks. Not sure how they're going to work in Montana because our climates are a little bit different. We're a little colder, and with the way our fleets run, some of the ranges that we're experiencing right now with the electric garbage trucks are not going to work with the amount of miles that we drive on a daily basis in the county. So, still testing, still seeing what the technology will move forward. But as a company, our sustainability goals and our emission goals are actually higher than what the goals of the city and the county are at this point.
That's great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
that's it's really nice to hear that a company is committed to it in that way, in a real way. What issues do you consider important for the team to consider?
I think the main issue is look outside the window right now. The smoke, the things that are going on. How do we move forward as a community to try to eliminate some of this stuff? I mean, we live in such a beautiful place. We're spoiled to be where we're at. But when you can look outside and you can't see the mountains, or you can't see the M on Mount Sentinel or the L on Jumbo, it's really disheartening, especially for somebody that's grown up here my entire life. And we've had some bad fire seasons, but it seems like lately it's just consistently been year after year after year. August and September is horrible. And then on the flip side of it, we get our inversions in the winter and we get everything in. So how do we help with the air quality in the county and in the city and the valley and move that forward? And then on the flip side of it, transportation issues. What are some other options? Can we bike? Can we ride the buses? And I think a lot of it also revolves around, as much as I hate to say it, the affordable housing issues that are going on in Missoula right now. And we've got people commuting 60, 70 miles a day. And what's that doing to our air quality and to our communities with more road traffic, more people driving back and forth? And how do we solve those problems as a community?
Yep, I agree. They're all interconnected. I think the council feels that acutely, how interconnected all of these are. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to compromise, collaborate, or deal with conflict, and what the results of your efforts were?
Oh boy, how many times have I done that over the years? I'm going to get away from the energy and climate side of it, and I'll talk about, I spent a little over a year on the Governor's Grizzly Bear Advisory Council. Citizen council of 18 of us that were in charge of making recommendations for the state and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks as to how we were going to manage bears moving forward. The conflict from both sides of it, being a hunter and a conservationist on my side, and also having to work with some NGOs, defenders of wildlife, folks that were on completely the other side of the spectrum. And bringing those people together, I think, played a huge part of what I can do or what I bring to a board or a committee. Is I can see both sides of the arguments, and I can bring them to the middle and try to make people understand. You know, the biggest thing for me is communication. If you have to listen to what the other person's saying, hear what the other person's saying, and you can still have good constructive criticism without just totally having a blowout session because you don't agree with what that person says. You know, make people see both sides of the story. And when we came together, the diverse group that we had, the 18 of us, we brought a really good document to the governor and to the state. And now the new governor is actually taking that forward and taking the recommendations out of there and trying to move that plan forward. So it was very contentious at times, but we got through it, we worked through it, and we made it, we delivered a really good product at the end.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear wildlife management is contentious in our state. That's a big one for sure. So thank you. And how would you describe the level of urgency associated with addressing climate change? And you've answered some of these, but I'm going to ask it. This is an example of what I said earlier. How do you talk to people who have a different sense of that urgency?
Well, again, I think you have to hear what they're saying and why they're looking at it from that perspective, why their urgency is may not be as high as yours, or why it's higher than yours. I've always said that, you know, Montana is 15 years behind the times on everything we do, and we probably should have had this conversation in the early 2000s to get moving on it. Same thing with the recycling side of it and some other things that are finally coming to fruition in Missoula. But it's hearing what that person has to say and having that conversation and trying to understand what the urgency is. Because as we all move forward, none of us on this call right now have the same priorities or the same perspectives. So it's just listening and moving that conversation forward and doing the legwork and making sure that we can all agree to disagree to a certain extent on moving it forward. But the end goal is what's really important for everything.
Right. Thanks. Couple closing questions that I think are a little easier. The city and county offer board training twice a year. The training covers good governance, open meetings, public participation and right to know, ethics, conflicts of interest, bylaws, minutes, and parliamentary procedures. The city council feels that it's very important that the city board members attend this training. And have you attended, or would you be willing to attend this training?
I've been through numerous board trainings, and yes, I would be willing to attend that.
Great. Thank you. The Energy and Climate Team is currently scheduled to meet monthly at a time designated by the committee. The meetings are set for the second Thursday of the month from 12 to 2. Do you have time to attend these meetings and to do the research necessary to participate in committee activities?
Yes, that's one nice thing about working for the company that I do. I have a lot of flexibility with my scheduling.
That's great. Thank you. I think we're a little bit, we're out of time, but I don't see our next interviewee here. So do you have any quick questions for us?
I guess the first question, maybe the only question I have, is what are you guys looking for in a member of the climate team? I'm just curious from my own perspective on that.
Well, I'm guessing that every counselor's answer might be a little different. So I'll answer it, and then if someone wants to chime in, feel free to do so. I mean, I think that we're looking for differing perspectives in solving the problems. We're looking for someone that works well in a group. We're, different backgrounds, and obviously someone that really cares about the issue. So, I think that's just having some different perspectives and someone that's engaged and works well in a group and is collaborative would be kind of the general things I would say. If someone wants to, let's see how we're doing time-wise. Yeah, we're okay because our next person is there. If someone would like to say, Heather, go ahead. I'd be happy for someone else to chime in on that.
I would echo those sentiments, Amber. I think you really kind of hit it on the head in terms of trying to make sure that we get a varying spectrum of perspectives that come to the table. I think our last interviewee, or maybe it was even the one before, had asked, what is this team tasked with? And I don't necessarily know what that overarching goal is. However, I would say we want some real concrete kind of solutions that can come from our community. And I think some of the things you've said today, Chad, really kind of underline that you've been thinking about this for some time, and how do we actually implement electronic garbage trucks throughout our community is really a very specific goal that we need. So I'm looking for specifics, ways that we can address our climate change.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate that. Yeah, I would echo what Heather said as well. So, Chad, thank you so much. It's nice to see you, even if it's only on Zoom. I'm really, as I was saying earlier, we get to go back to a hybrid in-person model soon. We're just finalizing and getting all the little kinks out, so it's smooth. But we're all ready for that. So. Thank you so much. And then we're going to finish our interviews today. I think maybe I said this at the beginning. I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but we're going to finish our interviews today, and then we are going to deliberate, and we'll be in touch with you soon. And thank you so much for your willingness and interest in serving on this. I think and I appreciate you as a member of our community as well, and the work you do to, toward these goals. So.
Thank you guys for taking the time to have me come in and visit with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Great. We have our next interviewee. I hope we're not having trouble. Is not here yet. We've got we're gonna have maybe a hard discussion here. We've got some very good candidates. It feels like this is always the case. So let's see. We do not have our next person. So I think we're not getting the breaks that we were promised in that agenda, which is usually what ends up happening. Let's just take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 9:37, we'll say, and check back in with us then. Hey, Jonathan, I just wanted to let you know that we are taking a quick break, and so we'll be back in session in just a second. Hey, Jonathan, I think I just promoted you to panelist. Oh, there you are. Okay, you're here. You're here. Good. All right, great. And we'll give I did a quick recess, so we'll just give people a couple more minutes and then we'll start the interview. So
Sounds good. Thank you.
yeah, great. Thank you. So as counselors kind of filter back in, if you'll just turn your video back on, we have one more minute till technically we're starting again. Our previous interviewee, we did not, Riley, I think, did not come, so we're not gonna do that interview, which puts us a little bit back on schedule, to be honest. So let's see, do we have everyone here? Okay, great. So we have Jonathan again. Yeah, thank you so much. I always like to start these by saying, giving my thanks as well as the council's thanks for just people being engaged and their willingness to serve on these committees and their interest in helping out in areas that they're passionate about. And so I just want to say from all of us, thank you so much for your interest in doing this. I think you're gonna end up being our last interview that we do. We had 5 people apply for one position, which is a fabulous problem to have, but it is very hard because I wish we could plug people in everywhere. But we'll have, looking at the configuration of the committee, we'll have some discussion after the interviews, and then we'll be getting back with you, in short order. But I'll run through the interview questions. I like to say, because sometimes it gets a little clunky, but I like to ask every question, that you may answer some of the questions depending on what your answers are, but I'm still going to ask them because then it gives you the opportunity to expand on those if you would like to. So yeah, so I will just get started and then you'll have an opportunity to ask us some questions at the end if you have them. What is your interest in serving on the energy and conservation, our climate team? And then just tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Sure, thanks. And thanks very much for considering my application for the position. So I guess my interest in serving on the energy and climate team is because Missoula is taking pretty bold climate action, especially for a city of our size. And I think that what Missoula does has sort of an outsized impact, not just on Montana, but on the climate and energy landscape of the West. I think here in Montana, we have a decent portion of the state's population here. And if we look at Bozeman and Helena, you see a lot of the state's population in Montana are in cities. And so I think cities are really taking the lead on climate change. And I think that's the case nationally too, especially we see a lot of the federal instability. Now we're seeing more state instability in terms of the direction that state and federal government is moving on climate change. So I guess I'm seeing cities more and more as the direction a lot of climate change and energy policy. I guess is happening at the city level. And so that's something I guess I'd really like to learn more about and get involved how I can. And I guess the other component of my interest is that, I think that what the city does on climate change and energy, it, has a direct impact on my friends and neighbors living here in Missoula. And a lot of the impacts of climate change directly impact Missoulians, whether or not it's, not just rising temperatures, of course, but the way that we address climate change, whether it's a more robust transportation infrastructure or more electric charging stations. Those are things which directly improve the lives of Missoulians. So I guess I see it as a way to have a pretty broad impact on multiple areas of residents' lives. In terms of my background, so I recently graduated in spring from the University of Montana with a bachelor's in wildlife biology and a master's and a minor in climate change studies. I'm about halfway through now, a master's in public administration with a public policy focus. So at I've sort of took on a variety of leadership roles as president and education officer of the Wildlife Society. I was on the ASUM Senate, where I was chair of the Transportation Committee and served on the Sustainability Committee, Budget and Finance Committee, and tried to get involved in the university in a bunch of other ways too. I was on the search committee for the climate change program coordinator. And so I guess now I'm kind of looking to expand a little bit more outside of into some work in the city and county. Through my, in college, I worked a variety of research and policy internships and jobs, working for Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, Arizona Game and Fish, and more recently in DC for the Forest Service, Legislative Affairs, and now in the Senate this summer.
Right, thank you. Describe your familiarity with the city's greenhouse gas and energy conservation plan. And are there areas that intersect with the city energy conservation and climate action plan?
Yeah, so in terms of the conservation and climate action plan, and I guess, when I think of that plan, what I think probably is one of the most important aspects of that is the pretty bold targets for emissions. I think by 2025, I think it's a net zero, I want to say, or somewhere in that realm. And, and that's soon. And there's a lot of interim goals as well. And so I think that, at least for me, is an area of interest to see where we are in meeting that, what else needs to happen. And I think that, whether or not we're exactly on track for those goals or not, the plan outlines a lot of, a whole host of other policy goals in order to get to some of those emissions plans. And I think a lot of those are really exciting. Everything from utilities and, working on utility programs and actually I was just looking at reviewing the plan earlier, but, street lights, electric charging stations. And so I guess what I see there is sort of a pathway to, in addition to reducing our emissions, kind of in some ways changing the landscape of the city to be more climate friendly and I think also make lives residents a heck of a lot better in doing so and more prepared and resilient for the future. And then I guess in the other part of your question in terms of how the conservation and climate action plan relates to the energy, did you say the energy reduction plan?
Energy conservation and climate action plan.
Okay, so I guess I'd have to look more into how the two relate to each other. I guess I'm most familiar with the conservation and climate action plan.
Okay, no, that's great. Do you have any, and you've answered some of this, so I want to preface with that. Do you have any personal or professional experience that relates to one of the areas in the conservation plan, energy and conservation plan?
Yeah, so I guess I wouldn't say I have any area that's specifically related to one part of that plan, but I mean, energy, climate conservation is, an area of personal interest as well as academically. It's been a focus of, both directly and indirectly through research I've done. I did a senior thesis on wildfires and I've worked on a lot of ocean intertidal issues that are related to climate change. So I guess from an academic perspective, it's sort of been a thread through some of the research I've done through the Master's in Public Administration program. I'm also tend to do, sort of taking a climate and energy focus. And so I guess it's an area that I I like to think pretty broadly. I'm sort of plugged into the science behind it, and a lot of the policy areas are stuff which I'm working on, both in an academic setting as well as learning a lot about through jobs I've had, like with the legislative affairs team of the Forest Service and in the Senate this summer, kind of getting a feel of different levels of where policy is interacting with the science to produce solutions.
Great, thank you. What issues do you consider important for this team to consider?
Yeah, I mean, I think one big issue is, I know, funding is always a limited resource. So, and I don't know if this is quite within the scope of the team, but just, I think, always looking for different innovative ways to fund climate resiliency solutions that aren't necessarily, related to taxes, but, at the federal level, there's trillions going into infrastructure. I'm not sure what that would look like for Missoula, but seeing if there's any way for Missoula to benefit from some of what's been happening at the federal level in terms of, in terms of these major funding packages. So I think always looking out for innovative ways to fund some of our climate initiatives, as well as I think making sure that people in Missoula are aware of what the city is doing on climate, and not necessarily always focusing on, climate change, but how is the city working to try to, lobby for, reduced electric bills, for example. And of course, the city doesn't have full control over that, but we can have a position on that. And same with transportation. So even though some of the goals of the city's work with Mountain Lion on transportation, some of the overarching goals might be climate related, it also helps people get to the store. So I think making sure that we're messaging to the city on hitting different points. So regardless of your thoughts on climate change, you'll support some aspects of our climate plan. I think also just, collaborating with Climate Smart Missoula, the university, a lot of these groups in Missoula, making sure everybody's sort of working, not duplicating resources, knowing what each other are doing. I think that's always good, especially in Missoula, where we have so many people with expertise in so many areas.
Great, thank you. And then just kind of moving on to some other type of questions. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to compromise, collaborate, or deal with conflict, and what were the results of your efforts?
Yeah, I guess a recent example I have is, so during the legislative session, there was a bill my advisor and I were working on. So I'm a Boone and Crockett fellow at the university, and it was related to hunting licenses for college students. And so it was sort of a proposal that we said, with the legislative session coming up, let's see if we can make this a law. It would basically make a lot of non-resident students, if they meet certain requirements, eligible for resident rate licenses, which has been a goal of a lot of hunter recruitment groups. And so, basically I was lobbying the legislature for the session on the bill. And so we wrote the bill, and, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the makeup of the legislature. So it's kind of interesting to see how we could get, some momentum behind making hunting accessible to not only college students, but non-resident college students. And so kind of spent the legislative session just walking the halls in Helena, meeting with legislators, trying to create some consensus around this, figuring out how do we, spread a message on this bill that's going to, be, not turn anybody off, that's going to include things that the Republicans want, that the Democrats want. And so we did get it over the finish line, and the governor signed it. We joined Governor Jean Forte in May for the bill signing. And so I think with that experience, I learned a lot of, how compromise can be both good and bad. You can make the bill a lot stronger, but then if you give everyone too much of what they want, you end up with a thing where nobody's happy and the bill's less effective. So it's sort of trying to find where's the sweet spot in compromise there. I'm not sure if I found that, but I definitely view compromise differently. And then working through conflict in terms of really trying to see where everybody is. So I'd be talking with some legislators from Eastern Montana who don't have a college or university in their district, but what's some common ground we can find, and how can I make what I want, give them something that they want. And that was something that I guess I did, pretty much every time I was in Helena. And I think, overall was successful, but it was a great learning experience.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I did some legislative work too, and I'm right with you on that. That's great. And we need to move along a little bit because we got our next committee coming up here. But how would you describe the level of urgency associated with addressing climate change? And how do you talk to people who have a different sense of that urgency?
Yeah, and I can give a quick answer here. So I think it's very urgent, as we're seeing each year in terms of talking with people about it. I think, of course, listen to where people are, ask questions, and try to, at least what I like to do is, instead of even just calling it climate change, I mean, nobody's going to advocate for pollution, or very few people would. People want a good transportation infrastructure. So I think it's taking climate change into some of these smaller pieces that most people agree on, finding that common ground and working on those issues, instead of just saying, why don't you believe in climate change? Just saying, well, we both want lower utility bills. Here's a way to do that. And, I think very often those goals will align, and we'll address climate change while making people happy.
Great, thank you. The last two are fairly easy, I think. The city and county offer board training twice a year. The training covers good governance, open meetings, public participation and right to know, ethics, conflicts of interest, bylaws, minutes, and parliamentary procedures. The city council feels it's very important that the city board members attend this training. Have you attended, or will you attend this training?
I've not attended the Missoula training, but I would definitely like to.
Great, thank you. And the Energy and Climate team is currently scheduled to meet monthly at a time designated by that committee. The meetings are set for the second Thursday of the month from 12 to 2. Do you have time to attend meetings and do the research necessary to participate in committee activities?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you. Sorry to move you along a little quickly at the end, because I really appreciated your thoughtful responses. But we've always got to keep us on schedule, so I'm trying to do that too. Again, we will be back in touch with you soon, and really appreciate your interest and all your really kind of thoughtful responses to the questions. And nice to meet you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Take care. Okay, so I feel like I was rushing them. That was a little faster than I like to make people go. But I will just, we have a few minutes here to deliberate. I am curious to hear what my fellow council people say. I feel like there is just a lot of, with these candidates, there's all very different perspectives and different background. So this one's hard for me, because I think we have a really, as we usually do, but kind of looking at what the climate team has and what we will need going forward and how to keep it, as we were talking about, a diverse group. This is a hard one for me, so I'm curious to hear from my fellow council people, and I will just go in order of what I see hands raised. Gwen.
Thank you. I agree. We've got an amazing crew that has applied for one spot. I wish we could always moderate this and somehow have the right amount of applicants for the right spots, but it's always feast or famine, and we've got a feast right now, which is a good problem to have. But having listened to all of them and then read their applications, I would like to put a motion on the floor that Jonathan Carlin be the nominee, having spent 2 years with the climate team as they work through things and seen the dynamic. And then I know you've been handling it for the last 2 years, Amber. I think Jonathan's work ethic, his participation and collaboration in so many different areas, he just exemplifies the person who just dives in and works on issues to really move them forward. And not that the other people don't also. We've got some awesome applicants, but I think his dynamic that he would bring and his skill set and his educational background would be great on the climate team. So I'd like to put that motion on the floor.
Okay, thanks. And so just as far as how we move along here, do we need to now take comments on that motion, or can we just take kind of general comments? I'm asking you, Gwen. I can't hear you. You're muted. You're muted, Gwen.
Sorry about that. I'll see if Jordan has anything else to add in on this, but I think we see what everyone has to say, and if there are any other motions, and then Jordan, we vote. I don't know.
Motion?
This is
I
something
like that.
we're working on the rules on this, but we don't have clarity yet. But for right now, Jordan, what are your thoughts on this?
That's the cleanest way would be to I mean, there are substitute motions and other things, but it would be much easier if we dealt with this motion first.
Oh, so you're suggesting we just have comments on this motion?
Well, I think it's your prerogative, Amber. If you want to do, it might be easiest if we just took general comments and then vote, and including on this motion, and then voted on the motion.
I think I'd like to do that. Thanks. This is a hard one, I think. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just take general comments as well as comments on this motion. And once we're through that, we will take a vote on this motion. The other, we have a little bit of an extra long break. We have a 30-minute break in between, but if I need to, could I steal a few minutes from Public Works? Actually, Mirta is not here, so I guess I'm going to steal something from her. Okay, Julie Merritt.
Thanks. I'll be quick. I'm concerned in the interest of having some diversity on this team. Currently, all of the current members are men, and I would just like to point that out. And so I am very concerned about filling this vacancy with another man. And so I have an alternate motion that I would like to put forth when the time is ready. And if that time is now, I can go ahead and do that.
Let's wait on that. I agree about the diversity. We do have some youth members that are females, but we did have our one female member leave last year.
One of the youth members is, so I don't support the motion to appoint Jonathan to this point. I really think that we need to try, we've got some other good candidates that would broaden the diversity on this panel.
Jordan.
Thanks. I appreciate the comments, Julie. I'm going to support the motion. I think we have a slate of fantastic candidates. I know several of them personally, and I'm familiar with their work. And I would speak really highly of all of them. I am really impressed with Jonathan's ability. Of course, I've worked with him really closely at the university. I'm really impressed with his ability to bring together incredibly diverse groups of people and to approach situations with intelligence and with a lens of really highly developed strategic thinking. And I think that we would be really well served by his appointment.
Thank you. Heather.
Thanks. Like Julie, I will not be supporting this motion for a different reason. And Julie, I think you make a really great case about not having any female representation. However, what I think we also lack is representation across ideological lines. And if I had my druthers, I would have Chad Bauer on this team. I guess he's been the first person that I've actually heard on this in terms of candidates who've actually connected the dots between our carbon emissions, the lack of affordable housing that causes people to commute. And if we can have more conversations around how we reduce those commutes and more affordable housing, I think we can actually achieve some of these carbon emission goals. So that's where I stand on this particular motion.
Thanks, Heather. Stacy.
Sorry, clicked the wrong button. I guess I was really impressed with all of the candidates who were interviewed I'm inclined to support the motion. However, I do appreciate the points of both Ms. Merritt and Ms. Harp have brought up. And I feel I'm struggling because I feel like we're making this appointment in somewhat of a vacuum and not really understanding kind of the demographics and the skill set and the backgrounds from the other members of the Climate Action Committee. To really, I mean, you know, to see kind of who could fit well into, if there was any gaps in the overall makeup. And so I'm really struggling with that, kind of not knowing that other piece of the pie, because, you know, is it full of policy makers and students, and Jonathan may not bring a different perspective, or are they all industry people and he would bring a perspective, or, you know, vice versa, and all of that. So is there a time limit on this appointment? Could we, I'm not trying to delay the process, but I feel like I could use a little bit more information before making a really educated vote on who to put on this, and wondering if there's a way to get, if we could hold this for a week or so and get sort of a little bit more information, if that's appropriate. Would love others' feedback on that.
So I would say that, yeah, I off the top of my head, I don't think it would be fair for me to try to summarize who is on the council and what their background is, because I certainly don't know all of it either. On the climate team, the appointment is for the 1st of August. But I don't think that we would be, if we waited until that Monday after that, I think that could be okay. So I'm not necessarily opposed to that. Just before I take your comment, Heather, I will say this is an interesting kind of process to go through, because I don't think we have any bad choices here. And as I was making notes, I kept kind of rearranging people. So as I said at the beginning of this discussion, I find this difficult. I was actually in my mind, and maybe it is, again, not knowing off the top of my head the exact resume of everyone that is on the climate team now, but feeling like I was agreeing with Heather as far as kind of Chad bringing a really just a different perspective on the ground, like changing how we're doing things today, and just kind of real actionable changes and connecting the dots. I agree with that too. I wasn't thinking that as much, but I also, you know, I'm waffling here, so I'm sorry, because I'm being, but Jenny's great. We do need diversity on that board. It is painful to not have any women on it. And Jonathan, you know, seems great, and that I like Jordan's comments about him, and I think just mind-wise, that's a really you know, important way to think, an important person to have on the committee. So I'm not helping the discussion, but I'm adding my 2 cents. Heather, go ahead.
Amber, you know, I think to your point, it seems like every time we go through this process of interviews, we're making that decision in a vacuum without knowing what that team composition is right now. Having created a lot of teams in the last year myself, I have been very specific about making sure that I have a very diverse perspective, and sometimes people's perspectives I may not have appreciated before. And I think this committee would be well served to postpone making this decision until next week. And in the course of this week, between now and then, if you can assemble kind of those strengths that those other existing committee members have, my hunch is that we're going to see a lot of science folks, science-based folks in this team already. But it would sure be nice to know that before we make a real recommendation to this team.
We absolutely are going to see a lot of science folks. If there's one way I would surmise the resumes of the people on the committee, which is not fair for me to do, not looking back at them, that we have a lot of brain trust of science people.
Sure. So how do we expand that model?
Heidi, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I support delaying voting on this till we have more comprehensive information on the what this committee currently has. But I do want to say that I feel like one of the challenges in implementing our climate plan and policies that we have is my audio okay? Okay. Is bridging that gap between, I guess the planning department especially. And so I think that there is an opportunity here to have some ideas on how to get from our plans to like actual implementable like changes and what we do on the ground level. And so yeah, I think it would be really great to know what everybody else's expertise is to see if that is actually a gap we need to fill.
Thanks, and I like that suggestion as well. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I had to step out and take a very stressful phone call, which I had, but I think I missed something on wanting to delay this voting.
Yeah, so Stacy was asking that we have this slate that is very different from each other as far as their backgrounds and their skill sets, and she felt that it would be helpful in making the decision if we got more of a summary around what the skill sets of the current members on the committee are. So she was suggesting that we delay a week in making this decision, which I don't see as a problem. And unless someone has a real issue with that, I think I would go ahead and say that that's what we're going to do. We'll send you resumes around that, and then we will put this on the agenda for next week to finalize a vote. And Julie, go ahead. I'm going to have to wrap up here quickly, though.
Just procedural question. Do you need a motion to hold this over, or is that just something that's the chair's prerogative?
I think it's the chair's prerogative unless someone tells me otherwise. I don't think we need a motion, but thank you. So unless someone corrects me on that, which I could be wrong, I'm going to go ahead and hold this over, and we will look at it again next week. And I will not actually be a committee next week, but I will ask one of you to run that committee for me. Stacy.
Great, thanks so much. Just super want to point out that our next committee meeting is actually public safety and health at 10:15 this morning. It's not no problem.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll obviously everyone can kind of come on at that time, and then but we'll let staff be getting your coffee and whatnot. But just wanted to put that's the next committee on deck.
Great. I must have been hopeful as I was looking at the wrong week, I think, of the next committee meeting. Okay, thank you, everyone. we're going to move this to next week. I appreciate everyone, the conversation, and because it's faster than I thought, the meeting is adjourned.